QR. This is designing and registering an apprenticeship in WAP, lessons from the field. And we have a great set of panelists today that will be giving us some great information. My name is Christopher Small. I am the Senior Associate of Weatherization Workforce Development here at the Community Action Partnership, and I'll be running this webinar as your host. Just a few quick technical notes before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and made available to you through a follow-up email here within the next several days. Please note that you'll be muted during this presentation, but if you'd like to hear out of your computer speakers, which I almost universally think you would be, you would lose audio at any time. You can click switch to that phone audio button on the bottom left-hand corner next to your microphone and get connected that way. You can also call into the session using the teleconference number located at the bottom of that email. So if we will have our next slide, I'd like to put a plug in for our 60th anniversary convention upcoming here in late August in Seattle. The pre-conference is the 26th and 27th. That's a Monday and Tuesday of August. The conference itself is Wednesday through Friday, August 8th through 30th. So if you have not yet registered, we encourage you to do so as soon as you can and make those travel arrangements and get registered. We look forward to seeing you for a wonderful 60th anniversary conference and celebration in Seattle. Next slide. Also, stay attuned to what's happening with NCAP's weatherization and energy departments by signing up for the Weatherization Plus, and you can follow us on social media. Those two respective QR codes will get you signed up and a part of our information and our greater team that we have in the weatherization and energy spaces. Next slide. As we do with every NCAP webinar that we host, we recite the promise of community action. It's in our DNA. It's where we've come from. So if you want to remain on camera and on mic, you can, or you can go off mic. The promise of community action. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. Thank you so much. The agenda for today is quite packed. We have a lot of great information, and each particular presenter will introduce themselves and their organization. You can see the agenda here, so I won't read it, but first up will be Miriam Sullivan from Jobs for the Future, and we'll turn it over to Miriam to begin.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam Sullivan. I am a senior director at Jobs for the Future. And what I'll do today is pretty much provide a 101 and start helping you think through your role in building out an effective apprenticeship program for weatherization. At JFF, just a little bit about our Center for Apprenticeship. Our work is all about supporting the ecosystem and just providing some evidence-based solutions and best practices and highlighting what we've learned from working with system stakeholders since 2017. And we're really focused on connecting diverse populations of young people and adults to quality jobs and help businesses develop workers and the skills they need to grow. But first, I'll start by setting the stage with what an apprenticeship is. I'm sure you all know what an apprenticeship is, but we always like to start by leveling the playing field or understanding, making sure we're all discussing the same thing. A program that provides earn and learn, so on-the-job training and classroom instruction, really allowing workers and learners to gain practical experience as well as theoretical, that classroom knowledge in a specific occupation. So what it is and what's a differentiator for apprenticeship is that it's a job from day one, that also provides like structured and supportive training. And that typically comes from a mentor. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's a high form of work-based learning. I talked about the earn and learn aspects of an apprenticeship, but it provides those key components. And it is one of the highest form of work-based learning. And in an apprenticeship, one of the differentiators is having that meaningful mentorship. So really tracking the progress of the apprentice while they're on the job. So having a supervisor and someone really dedicated to the learner and the worker, making sure that they have a resource or someone to go to make sure that they're learning all of the skills. And while on the job, having a trusted partner to connect with that will help their learning along the apprenticeship pathway. And also apprenticeships provide that industry recognized credential. In your programming, you can do this many ways. They might receive the credential at the end of their apprenticeship, or you might stack on where they're receiving multiple industry recognized certifications and credentials during their programming. And, apprenticeships is definitely a way to meet the workforce demands, and you're all doing that in your programming. And in a bit, I'll talk about what's really required to get your program off the ground really effectively, but it's a way to expand partnerships and resources. Next slide. And so these are the required components of an apprenticeship. So if you've sat through any apprenticeship 101 or you've started to build your program, you would have seen some type of image similar to this, but it's really important that you consider all of these components when building out your program. First and foremost, it is industry-led. So your programming should be designed and guided by the industry needs. And you're all here and you've done that, right? But really ensuring that the training is relevant and up to date with sort of like the current practices, technologies, and having industry involvement is key to that. I talked about apprenticeships being a paid job from day one. But again, this is one of the differentiators where you're providing progressive wage increases to the apprentices as they're attaining more skills while they're in your apprenticeship programs. And then another key factor or key component is that structured on the job and learning and also mentorship. So the apprentice receives hands-on training in a real work environment. So really building time for the apprentices to spend time on the job, really getting that hands-on experience. And this component is really critical for the learner to learn the nuances of the trade. Another key component is having that related technical education, right? That can happen on the employer. There are instances where we find that the employer might provide the classroom training where folks get time off and where they can do their learning a couple of times a week, or they can go off to a training center to receive their classroom training, or they can partner with a community college or another post-secondary entity to provide that classroom training. And the other piece is making sure your apprenticeship program promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, really ensuring the opportunities are available to a wide range of individuals in your communities, including groups that are typically underrepresented in that occupation or in apprenticeships generally. And then a couple more components, it's, the quality and safety. That's a key aspect of apprenticeships, allow you to make sure that, high standards of training, workplace safety is provided through your programming. So the workers are, performing their work with all of the training that's needed and have the quality of safeguards in place as well. And then the final thing that I talked about last time is that industry credential. So upon successful completion of the apprenticeship program, apprentices should receive a recognized certification or credential, really signaling to their employer that they've attained the classroom experience and also the on the job experience needed to be proficient in their occupation. Next slide. And so you can do this many different ways, and there are many different types of apprenticeships. I'd love to hear in the chat, like, what are you all doing? What types of apprenticeship programs you're building? But so there's time-based, which is really some of the more traditional types of apprenticeship that you might find in the trades, but the minimum is 2,000 hours of on-the-job training, and then it's recommended that you have a minimum of 144 hours of classroom and training. And this varies, but these are the minimum standards for time-based apprenticeships. You know, there are some electrician apprenticeship programs that might be 6,000 hours on the job, but this really varies and provides a baseline. And there are a couple of other types of registered apprenticeships. So you have competency-based, and so this is where the apprentice demonstrates their, knowledge and skills attained, and that's typically validated by their sponsor, their supervisor, and this is more of a self-paced option. And then the last is the hybrid, where it blends a mix of time and competency. So you might have an element of your program that's time-based. So you might say they need to have X hours of safety, but then you might have another way that's more competency-based for showing that they've demonstrated a particular skill. So you could blend the mix of time and competency. But these are the three types of registered apprenticeships that currently exist in the system. Next slide. And so this is like the more fun slide, right? I know you all either have programs or building your programs or are interested in building weatherization programs. And one of the things we always hear at JFF in our center when we find that people are struggling to build their programs, it's just that they're trying to play all of the roles, right? They're trying to figure out, like, do they need to provide the supportive services? Do they need to build out the classroom? Do they need to do all of the administrative requirements that's required with a registered apprenticeship? And, how do they provide the on-the-job training? So I'll talk through 4 examples, and then you'll hear right after me, lessons from folks that'll like get a little bit deeper in how they actually did this. So the first image you're looking at on your left is a single employer model. So in this instance, you have a sponsor, and a sponsor is, an employer or an organization that administers or operates the apprenticeship program, and they, partner with like the Office of Apprenticeship or the state apprenticeship agency. And this sponsor can be in a single entity, but they're the ones that are doing all of the roles. And the Northeast Community Action Corporation, they're going to talk through how they do that. So they're the employer of record. They're doing the recruiting, the selection of the apprentices. They're providing the on-the-job training. And they're also like building out the curricula and making sure the training is provided. They're doing that themselves. And then they're also serving as a program sponsor. So they're doing, they're building out the program from beginning to end, and they're either playing the role or partnering with an organization that's providing that, but they're responsible for all aspects of the apprenticeship. And I would argue that's the most difficult role to play. And so one of the things we encourage is really lean to your strengths. The next image on your right shows sort of like a multiple employer model and multiple intermediary model, and also having one employer. So in this instance, you'll have, one or intermediary that's doing, providing or finding the supportive services, maybe connecting with a training provider to provide the RTI, and they're serving as a program sponsor. In this model, the intermediary who's an organization or third partner that has the resources to play these multiple roles, but they're really convening and facilitating the development of this like collaborative apprenticeship system. But what they are doing is they're providing with they're connecting and collaborating with the employer to provide that on-the-job experience. So these are two models, and there are two others on the next slide. And the one on the left kind of shows the multiple employer, an intermediary, and a community college. So this is where you're starting to build out your ecosystem. You've figured out, I don't need to provide all of these services, but I have the partners in my ecosystem to do that. And you're having a couple of intermediaries that are doing some of the more administrative and providing the supportive services, and you have connected with an employer to provide the on-the-job training. And you've partnered successfully with the training providers to provide the RTI. And then the approach on the right that has the multiple employer and multiple intermediaries. And this is a complicated model because, the intermediaries, there are multiple intermediaries, there's an educator, there's also an employer. So it's like managing all of these different partners requires a lot of coordination and just ensuring that there's one effective intermediary that's leading this body of work, but also acknowledging that not every player is playing every single role. So these four approaches are really to help you think through, like, what role do you need to play in building out your program? And you don't need to play all of the roles. And the folks that are coming after me will actually provide some context to see how this works in action. Next slide. Next. And so this slide really gets at the partnership models that are required in an apprenticeship. So at JFF, partnership is key. There's just no way to get an apprenticeship program off the ground alone. It's just to be really effective, to build out a high quality apprenticeship program, you need to consider these various partners, starting with the workforce system. They're really key in getting your programs registered and getting resources to think about the funding that's required to get the program off the road, off the ground. Multiple businesses. In the beginning, I started with industry being key, really making sure you have the voices of the businesses, to provide the on-the-job training that's needed. Also to validate the curricula, like, are you providing the apprentices with the skills that's needed by the industry? And then you also have K-12. They could run a pre-apprenticeship program for you. The community college can deliver the technical instruction. And the key in the last couple of slides and this slide, it's really for you to think about, do I have the right partners in play to really build out an effective apprenticeship program? And the model to the right just shows, like, maybe you don't have all five. Maybe you bring in your labor partners. They can serve a role as sponsoring the program. They could provide training, depending on the occupational path, really considering these various stakeholders for your partnership model. And then, career and tech schools also can play in this model as well to deliver the technical instruction. So the key in apprenticeships, you have multiple options. There's no reason for you to try to play every role unless you can and have the capacity to, but it's really a partnership model where you're bringing all workforce and education and employer stakeholders at the table to build out effective pathways. And next slide. And this slide, it's one of my favorites, and I tend to go back to this all the time, right? So there are the apprenticeship system. It's a bifurcated system, so it's regulated by two types depending on what state you're in. The darker shaded states well, I can't tell from this image. The darker shaded states are the state apprenticeship agencies. So they're governed and administered by state entities, and the lighter shaded blue states are administered by the federal offices of apprenticeship. And these are important to note. Each state or federal agency has a director that's in charge with overseeing the state. They regulate, they register. And so as you're developing your program, it's really key to know who those stakeholders are, because they're really important in connecting you to resources, to registering your program, and really to provide you with all of the information connection that you would need to get your programs off the ground. And the next slide has just a list of resources that we put together, really that goes in depth in what are the things you need to consider when thinking about the role you want to play in developing your apprenticeship. And then there are some other resources around how to build out a high quality, what are the elements that you need to add into your program, and different approaches that partners in the field across the country have figured out for different population. And then there are a number of self-paced training courses that we've put together that are free and of use to you all. Like if you're thinking about building out your mentorship in your apprenticeship program, how do you go about that? How do you make sure that it's built with DEIA in mind? How do you register a program? Just nuts and bolts. We've provided these resources that really gets in depth and some of the intro things that I shared today. So with that, I'll stop and turn it back to you, Chris.
Do we have any questions at this point? The chat is pretty quiet at this point, but there's been a couple folks that have weighed in on instruction and hybridization of that and their partnerships. Okay. Hearing none verbally, we'll move on to our next speaker at this time.
Hey, I'm Carla Potts. I'm with Northeast Community Action Corporation in Missouri, Bowling Green, Missouri. And we have an existing program that I'll talk a little bit about, the why we did it, how we did it, and has it been successful? What are the results? And what have we learned from the process? So, Amy, I'm ready for my first slide, I think, and now my second. Thank you. Anyway, we serve a little background about Northeast Community Action Corporation. We serve 12 counties in Missouri. We have 9 rural counties and 3 urban counties. We have a large community action budget, 30 different funding sources and 60 different programs, 110 full-time employees and 90 part-time employees, and thousands of clients a year we serve, just like every community action agency. Next slide, Amy. So a little bit about why did we do an apprenticeship program? Well, when we first began, knowing that we were going to get a lot of new weatherization money, which was a wonderful thing, wonderful problem to have, we didn't have staff. So we, had advertised, and some of you may have shared our frustration, and we were getting nowhere fast. We had reached out to Workforce Investments saying we're going to need a lot of people, and we still weren't getting a lot of applications. And when we got applications, we got a lot of no-shows when we went to interview. So we said, well, we have to do something different because this isn't working. We had the McDonald's and Amazon and Starbucks and all of those places paying more than we were paying. People didn't seem so interested in the benefits. So what can we do to really showcase green energy and the importance of weatherization and the importance of a career track in green energy? Next slide, Amy. So we looked at our budget. You know, we have DOE money, we have LIHEAP money, we have utilities, we got extra ARPA LIHEAP. We had about $2 million just in those funds, doing about 200 homes per year. We are all crew-based. We have an occasional contractor, but we even have our own HVAC people in-house. We have, like weatherization in most areas, we have a long waiting list, and that continues to grow on a daily basis, which is a wonderful thing. And then we were getting all of this bill money and how many homes we were going to have to do. And we needed at least 30 more employees. And again, you know, what a great opportunity this is to reach more households, but we need employees to be able to reach more households. So next slide. Okay, our overview of our program. Well, ours is a one-year program, and we're a single employer model. We have 144 hours of classroom training, 2,000 hours of on-the-job training, and a little bit about our classroom training. We do general construction training, workplace safety, weatherization tech, and a lot of this is a mix between classroom and OJT. We do asbestos training, mold, and of course OSHA 10. Our first apprenticeship was a home performance laborer residential. And since that time, that has been such a successful thing for our employees and for our agency and for our clients to be able to weatherize the homes that we need to weatherize. Department of Labor reached out to us and said, why don't you do a second apprenticeship? And we said, great idea. So we added energy auditor, and I talked a little bit about that we want to talk to people when they come in to interview, that there is a career path in green energy and how important that is for them. Apprentices are NCAP employees. They start at $16 an hour, get raises periodically throughout their apprenticeship. We work a 40-hour work week, 4 10-hour days, and we were doing that before we started the apprenticeship program, and that still wasn't getting people. We have 100% paid health insurance. We were doing that before the apprenticeship program, and that still wasn't attracting people. So I have to tell you, the apprenticeship program is what attracted people. They start as crew laborers, and they can train up to auditors and QCI. Next slide. This slide is really the Department of Labor's registered occupation and their code. I remember talking to the Department of Labor and saying, this is what we want to do. And he said immediately, this is what the code is. So they immediately knew weatherization and what particular code it fell under and occupations. The process, which is the next slide. I will confess that when we began, knew nothing about the apprenticeship program. When somebody suggested to us that we register as an apprenticeship program, we said that'd be great, but we don't know anything about it. We know that the Carpenters Workers Union have an apprenticeship program, but we don't know. We don't know that we can do that. So we started not knowing anything, and I can tell you it was a seamless project. We worked with the Department of Labor directly. They sent us our registration, our paperwork to fill out. It took less than 30 days to register our program, and they were incredible help to us during that process. And the key thing to remember, I talked to a lot of agencies. If you're a weatherization agency, you're already training staff. You're already doing this. We're just formalizing the training that we already do with our employees. It boosted recruitment. I can absolutely tell you that. We have a rolling admission if someone leaves, and we've had a few people leave for other jobs, but not many. We've trained 22 people so far. They're paid through DOE WAP, utility funds, the various programs that in weatherization we use. And of course, we put materials to the house and labor to the funder are split by a percentage. The next slide. Has it been successful? The proof's always in, does it work, right? Sounds good, does it work? Well, 17 have graduated and still with us. That's another issue we had. We get people trained and they leave us. If we get a hire, then we get people trained and they leave us. Now we have a lot of employees that have been with our weatherization program for a very long time, but it seemed like if we did hire someone new, they left and we got them trained and then they left. So 17 graduated, 17 still with NCAP. We have 3 now in the process of training. 1 will graduate in June, 1 in December, and 1 in January. And 3 that have completed both apprenticeship programs and are now energy auditors, QCI, and on that green career path. I can't tell you enough, when we would interview people, I would talk about that green career path. And if you're young and starting out, and even if you're not so young and starting out, here's a pathway. And green energy, how important that is. Here's a pathway to that industry. Next slide, Amy. We did use partners. We have a single model, but a single employer model, but we had partners. Of course, the biggest partner was the U.S. Department of Labor, the Missouri Department of Labor. We went to the Northeast Missouri Workforce Development Board when we first knew we needed to hire a lot of people, and they were incredible partners and still are. When we began this program, we knew that we needed to do some pre-apprenticeship, that we get people that we can train in weatherization, but sometimes they don't have those soft skills that maybe we have neglected to train in. And so the Pike Lincoln Technical Center, which is a vocational school, launched a pre-apprenticeship program for us. And they really did the soft skills, the showing up on time, the getting along with your coworker. And these 3 weeks were paid for by the North Workforce Development Board. And I noticed that there were 30 graduating seniors in May when we began our program 2 years ago that were recruited for that July 1 start date. Now, not all of them decided to come our way, but it was a great connection and a great partnership. So the partnerships are really important. And I have a copy of the thing on the side is just the ads that we put out when we're looking for someone. Next slide. This is our very first person that we hired. And he just had a good quote. When I got hired at NCAP, I wanted to help out in any way I could. And the apprenticeship program sounded like a really good program. And I saw the benefits of it. It will jumpstart the necessary skills to perform my job that I didn't necessarily have before starting. How important those words are. That's what the apprenticeship program does. Next slide. Here was our first graduation. Very first one. Lots of people in attendance with the Department of Energy, Division of Energy, and Department of Labor was there. And so we try to celebrate. We did another graduation in July of 2023, and we'll have another one in December of 2024. Really celebrating the accomplishments and how valuable that certificate is for the people who complete. And my final slide, what did we learn? Well, we learned a lot, Our first lesson was we really learned the value of the program to the staff that took the training. And I can't stress enough the green career path. People are looking at careers, not just jobs. And I think we have to phrase it as that, and we have to talk about it. Weatherization is such an important program in green energy, and we have to talk about that and help the people we talk to see the value. Lesson two, partnerships. I think as community action, we are the best of the best at partnerships, but I think we continue to learn. I've been with NCAP a really long time, 45 years, and I continue to learn about those partnerships and that thinking outside the box. It's kind of like when we first realized that we're going to have money, we need to weatherize homes, and we can't find people. We have to do something different. We can set and say this is a problem, or we can do something different and we can think outside the box. So thanks to the people who brought the apprenticeship program to our attention. And lesson three, I don't know that we say this enough, but how important weatherization is. It's a vital player in the green energy careers. It's important to our clients. We know that. It's important to the staff we have too. They're not only starting a career path, but they're doing something that's really valuable and really means something. I've had more of them say to me, I really like this career path because I get to help people and I get to make a difference. We say that all the time. They feel it every day. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to once more share about NECAC's program and how truly excited we are about this program and how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. We had a question from the field, so to speak, as what do you attribute to the successful retention rate, which I believe you kind of just touched on from you touched on from all three of those lessons you just described. But how do you attribute the successful retention rate?
Well, I think it is dollars. I think, we continue to give raises to our employees, but I think it's a lot more than just dollars. I think it is the value of what we do. I think it is that person who says to me, I never had a job that I really made a difference for somebody, and I really make a difference. I think it is that seeing that career as opposed to is just a job. It's just a job. So I think it's money. I think, people like to get raises. We all like to get raises. We like to be recognized. But I think it is more intrinsic value to why we keep people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Carla. You certainly are a warrior across the Weatherization Network at 45 years and counting. And we appreciate your insight and your skill sets. We'll turn it over to our next presenter at this point.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Sawyer. I'm the Dean of Workforce Development and Community Engagement at Washington County Community College. We're a super small institution on the Canadian border in the easternmost point in the United States, in a little town called Calais, Maine. And we deliver lots of short-term training options, as well as certificate and associate degree programming. And we're really working to braid registered apprenticeship across all of our training opportunities. Prior to coming to WCCC, I spent many years working for the Maine Department of Labor. And when I arrived, it seemed sort of like a no-brainer that we wouldn't be playing a more important and upfront role in Maine's apprenticeship programming. So I'm excited to be here. And next slide, please. So just to talk about a little bit about our weatherization technician apprenticeship that we started a little over a year ago with our local CAP agency, Down East Community Partners. As was mentioned in the first slide, there are a couple of types of situations with apprenticeship in the United States. Maine happens to be a recognized state apprenticeship agency, so Maine monitors and develops and delivers their own apprenticeship programming here in Maine. And we at WCCC are an intermediary sponsor of apprenticeship. And we currently have 12 approved occupations across various sectors. And one of those sectors is green, and climate resiliency. And we're building some work in that, and our weatherization technician program, in partnership with DCP, is really a first step for that. We do lots of work with multiple partners, and as I mentioned, this particular apprenticeship was really a true partnership with DCP. We were able to utilize their subject matter experts to develop and deliver the curriculum and the related instruction, and that was super important. DCP at the time had received some grant funding from the Maine Governor's Office of Energy, which really spearheaded some of this and jump-started it, frankly. As we know, this programming sometimes takes lots of resources and capacity, so we were fortunate to have that. We also, for the past year, have been operating and really working to build out our apprenticeship models as an intermediary sponsor, with some grant funding from the Maine Department of Labor as well. So we were really fortunate to have some of those funding options available. So Downey's Community Partners committed one full-time person working on the curriculum development and the specific classroom delivery, and 2 people working on the lab instruction. And I'll go into details in the next slide about what that looked like. This model is a 3-to-1 ratio, where we have 3 apprentices assigned to 1 journey worker. And from this initial project, Downey's Community Partners gained 3 new employees. One is now a crew leader as well. And through that process, we've also identified the need for a registered occupation as a crew leader, which we'll be working on super soon. Our part really was assisting with that curriculum build, certifying that initial related technical instruction. And really, as we do as an intermediary sponsor across the board, we're managing all aspects of the apprenticeship. And we're serving as the sponsor, we're providing services, we're providing RTI, we're assisting with DIE and DIE&A challenges, tracking, and all of that good stuff. And as I mentioned, we'll be replicating this model over the next year, with 3 additional cohorts, only 9 students each. Remember, we're super small. And we're fortunate to be partnering with Downey's Community Partners again on that, who have just received some outside funding to move forward with this work. Next slide, please. In the our next sort of version of this programming, we'll also be doing some extensive career development work with our K-12 partners, career and technical education, and our workforce system. And we do the majority of our work with all of those partners anyway. Really, in this part of the state and country, we really can't do a lot without the support of really close partners. So this is an outline of our apprenticeship, weatherization technician apprenticeship. Much like Carla's, it was a 2,000-hour apprenticeship. We considered this a hybrid model, though. We have 144 hours of related instruction. What you see in blue is what we originally built into our program for the related technical instruction. And what you see in green are things that got added as we went along. And so we're really excited about all of this training and these stackable credentials. They're so very important. And Downey's Community Partners also were able to pay wages during all of the training, which was a huge bonus for people. And I think really important also to note is everything in blue was front loaded. So that training happened initially before people went on the job. And again, being able to pay wages for that was really, really, really essential. We also have a number of required competencies that had to have been attained and measured that are all related to the on the job learning. And I also like to talk about one of the students that participated in that cohort, who is now a crew leader at Down East Community Partners. But he is a person, a very young person, who actually experienced these climate challenges in his previous occupation, which is a lobster fisherman. And he recognized the changes in the ocean here and the fishery, and seeing some of those being really negative challenges, and jumped at the opportunity, frankly, to do this work around a green pathway and climate resiliency. And it's a really cool story about coming full circle. Next slide, please. And much like Carla, many of the things that she mentioned, the lessons learned, partnership and collaboration. It's key. It's absolutely key. And we love the model in our workforce division, and actually across the institution, where we're utilizing subject matter experts from the industry for not only developing, but helping deliver the curriculum and the related technical instruction. There's no way for us to pull it off. We're not immune to the workforce crisis. Finding instructors is super hard. So when we have these really strong networks and partnerships with industry and business, using the subject matter experts from within, it's really the best model. Another thing that we learned is really digging in and utilizing what already exists for curriculum. And this was fantastic because we used curriculum that was already built from several sources, BPI, EPA, Department of Energy, and others. And so there's just so much out there that it just made it super simple to put everything together. And they result in multiple credentials, which we know as students stack them and enter the workforce, it really, really creates a nice, well-rounded package. And also, this is really an ideal field to utilize a registered apprenticeship model. I happen to personally believe that there's not many that aren't perfect for using a registered apprenticeship model, but this really was. And the reason is that, as mentioned before, much of the related instruction already exists. The industry gets workers who have basic knowledge. It's simply a win-win across the board. We're not reinventing the wheel. The wages in Maine are in line with good jobs principles established by the USDOL, which we use frequently. And all of those stackable, highly portable certifications are just really, really great. And I think also one of the things that's really, really, really important is creating visibility about this as a pathway and a sector. And we're really happy to be working in this space. That's all I have. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you so much for your insight and your perspective. I think we all should be aware that we as a collective industry can't ignore the higher ed, and the two-year community college is a vital partner, and even further in the, as you mentioned wisely, the K-12 partnerships and that exist there too. So thank you. Thank you so much.
I will add one little thing that I just realized that I forgot to mention is that the initial curriculum that we pieced together and we certified, we offered 3 college credits for that. And we often do that and try to do that wherever we can in this particular institution, again, to create an entry point to a pathway and a career pathway. And although we do not have a year or a 2-year associate degree in place yet around green practices or climate resiliency, it's in our forefront. So this is a place for students and apprentices who are reading this to potentially enter a post-secondary program with some credits attached to them. And we're really excited about entering into that work with our partners as well.
It generates credit hours for you, and it's a potential on-ramp, as you just mentioned. Very good stuff. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much. Let's move on to our next presenter.
Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Dio. I'm with Pennsylvania College of Technology, the Clean Energy Center, and I just wanted to thank all the speakers before me for just setting this up perfectly for the next round. So great overview of apprenticeship, great examples of what is already being really successful in some other states. I've been asked to share a little bit about what we're doing in Pennsylvania. We're just getting started with this, and we actually had invited Carla Potts to present to Pennsylvania on this, and she's really generated a lot of excitement and interest for Pennsylvania and some other states to pursue, you know, based on the successes that have been happening in other states. So we've taken some of what's working in other states, and we have been the training provider in Pennsylvania for the Weatherization Assistance Program for about 40 years now. I've been doing this for 15 of that. For those of you that were hired on during the ARA Act, I was one of those, and I've stayed on because I've really enjoyed working in the weatherization sector and just seeing the high impact work that our workforce does. Go ahead, next slide. So our role in this, Penn College's Workforce Development Department has a lot of experience doing apprenticeships in other sectors like advanced manufacturing and healthcare. We are using that experience within the college and our apprenticeship center to help us dive into clean energy apprenticeships and really focusing specifically on the weatherization program. We've been asked and tapped by the state of Pennsylvania to utilize our bill funding to set up 2 different apprenticeships that I'll talk about. And as part of that, our role is the group apprenticeship sponsor, or what Miriam was showing you earlier with the charts, we're the multiple employers plus intermediary. So we're providing all of the support to the weatherization agencies and subcontractors to register the programs with the state of Pennsylvania. We're going to explain all those requirements to the employers, collecting paperwork, all the data entry into the Rapids reporting system for Department of Labor. We're also the ones responsible for developing the RTI for the program. And in this case, because we are the training center for Pennsylvania, we're also providing the RTI. And then the last one, taking the on-the-job competencies and building them into the apprenticeship, and then being able to explain them to the employers. So we're setting 2 of them up right now in the state, and any weatherization employer, both within the Weatherization Assistance Program and also in the private sector, are available to sign up for becoming a participating employer. Those employers that are participating from the Weatherization Assistance Program are funded in this, so the bill funding is covering their training and wages being paid while somebody is attending the training. Next slide. The first apprenticeship that we're pursuing right now is the energy specialist, and it is 2,600 hours, and it's time-based. So even though the training that we offer is very competency-based, we'll talk a little bit later. One of the recommendations that we got was that time-based would be one of the easier ways to get things approved through Pennsylvania. So we went with that. That requires a minimum of 188 hours of related technical instruction. So those hours are centered around the Clean Energy Center's IREC accredited Home Energy Professional Energy Auditor Training Program. We've supplemented our energy auditor training with some additional content that was mentioned earlier, some soft skill training, communication, leadership, DE&I, as well as some upcoming renewable building electrification training that we felt that energy auditors would also need to have. The OJT, we went through, we pulled the OJT that had been put into the energy specialist paperwork or work process schedule that Department of Labor had. We crosswalked it with that job task analysis that NREL has for HEP Energy Auditor to make sure that everything was covered in the OJT was also covered in the job task analysis. And we built a couple credentials into the apprenticeship training, including OSHA 10, EPA-led BPI Building Science Principles. We chose specifically not to require BPI Home Energy Professional Energy Auditor certification because it is so stringent, but we made sure that the program prepares somebody to actually take that exam. Just as far as capacity to build this program, we found that it took about a half of a person for half of a year to go through the entire process specific to Pennsylvania for putting together the application, making sure that the RTI and the OJT were in place, and then going through the process of getting that reviewed through the state. We are actually on the schedule within the next week to present this in Pennsylvania, and fingers crossed it will go smoothly. And then after that, once we start rolling this out in Pennsylvania, it'll be to be determined how many, depending on how many employers decide to participate. Thank you, Allison. How many employers decide to participate, as well as how many apprentices are enrolled in the program. You know, that could be one person, it could be two people. So we'll find out how it goes. Next slide. The other apprenticeship that we're pursuing is similar to what the other states are going after right now, which is weatherization technician. And again, this is time-based, 2,000 hours, a minimum of 144 hours of RTI. And again, we've really tried to align the RTI with the IREC accredited training that we offer for installers and crew leaders. So just like what was mentioned before, we're taking what's already existing and we're formalizing it as part of this apprenticeship. Again, we have added in some soft skills into this that are so important. We went through the crosswalk again and looked at that job task analysis, the national one, and mapped it to the OJT that was out there, that was nationally in the Department of Labor system. And we maintained that OSHA 10, EPA-led, and BPI Building Science Principles as 3 national credentials that somebody would get out of this after they're done with their apprenticeship. So same level of effort. And again, that's the next one we're pursuing. This particular apprenticeship is a little bit more closely aligned with the carpentry apprenticeships and the building trades apprenticeships. So we're not sure, you know, what that's going to look like when we present it to the state. So that's why we went with energy specialists first. So I can answer this question that just popped up. What is the source of funding that covers the wages for the individuals during the apprenticeship? So the wages are covered through the Weatherization Assistance Program. In Pennsylvania, there's wage reimbursement for somebody to attend home energy professional training. Okay, go ahead, next slide. So our top 3 lessons learned so far, we're just at the beginning of this journey, but we spent a lot of time trying to decide whether to do a time-based apprenticeship or a competency-based apprenticeship or a hybrid. Like I said, all of our training is competency-based, so we were leaning in that direction, but when you go with a competency-based apprenticeship, you really have to build out different toolkits to show how you're going to make sure that somebody has attained that competency. So we were steered in the direction of, if you go with time-based, it could be a little bit more straightforward and easier for the the program to put together, to get it registered. Also, employers are already kind of tracking those OJT hours as part of any BPI certification prerequisites. But now it's just aligning those hours with the work process schedule. The next lesson learned we had was trying to use what's already established and not try to create something from scratch. If there's something out there that that Department of Labor has that you can utilize that's already been approved, like for example, going with a number that have already been established or work process schedules, it's supposed to make it easier when you present it to your apprenticeship council, because you're already utilizing what's been approved. We were able to make minor modifications. For example, for energy specialists, it included some commercial work. For our purposes in the state, we removed references to commercial buildings and really focused it on residential. And then the last lesson learned that we had is we didn't know, but you can ask anyway to sit in on the other meetings that happen and watch other apprenticeship programs get presented and find out, how it goes for them, what kind of questions you might have to answer. And it gets you a little bit more familiar with the council that will hear your program and understand what they're looking for. So some states are more rigorous than others. And so if you get a chance, go ahead and ask if you can listen in and watch what's going on with other apprenticeships and help you get prepared if you're going to present one.
Allison, thank you so much for your input and your unique little caveats that you brought to this ongoing discussion. Do we have any questions related to Allison's portion of this presentation at this point? Don't be shy. Put them in the chat or in the Q&A if you've got them. Okay. Going once, going twice, hearing none. Again, thank you, Allison. We'll move on to our next presenter.
Hello, everyone. Lots of great information has been shared today, and I'm sure you all are enthusiastic about registered apprenticeship programs. So now we're going to talk a bit about how to diversify your registered programs. I'm Janelle Hills Thomas. I am with the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, Director of Equitable Workforce Strategies, and I will be talking to you a bit about diversity, equity, inclusion in registered apprenticeship in clean energy. Next slide, please. Typically, I like to include graphics, more graphics than words in my presentation, but this one is just the opposite because I didn't want to lose any of the important information since I have so much to deliver. You can go to the next slide, Amy. This is just a disclaimer from the Department of Labor saying they're not responsible for anything I'm saying in today's webinar. So just a safeguard for the Department of Labor. Next slide. IREC has a program called the ACE Network, Apprenticeship in Clean Energy, and it's a national coalition of industry training and workforce development leaders who are expanding registered apprenticeship programs in our industry. We received a contract from the Department of Labor last year to be an industry intermediary, and these are some of our partners on the project. So you may recognize some of these names. There will be an email address shared at the end of this presentation to contact us for more information. We are nearing completion of our first year contract with the Department of Labor, but we have received the second year contract to provide technical assistance, and I'll talk to you more about what that is at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. In today's webinar, we will cover these topics. Links and resources will be provided at the end of the presentation, and some are even embedded in the slide deck. So we'll talk about DEIA, the benefits, veterans, recruitment, retention, because you can't talk about recruitment without talking about retaining the workforce that you hire. We'll talk a bit about equal employment opportunity and affirmative action plans. Next slide, please. As Miriam shared, the Department of Labor aims to ensure that DEIA is a part of registered apprenticeships, providing opportunities for all populations, especially underserved population. And it's a great model to diversify your workforce. So we're going to talk about a bit about diversity, equity, inclusion. Next slide, please. And what that really means. I know we've heard this acronym a lot. A lot of people are tossing around DEIA initiatives, DEIA programs, and hiring DEIA coordinators and directors. But diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is more than just checking the box saying, okay, we've hired, someone, they're diverse, someone is leading the efforts, but what does it really mean? So diversity is understanding that even when people appear the same, they are different in many ways. I like to describe equity as fairness, treating all members of the workplace fair. Inclusion is intentionality and ensuring that each person feels connected and valued, offering a sense of belonging, a very organic process to make someone feel like they belong in the culture in the workplace. And accessibility is providing access to everyone. Please note that sponsors bear the responsibility of ensuring that reasonable accommodations are provided, and apprentices and applicants are given the opportunity to self-identify, and provisions and accommodations should be made. For instance, an apprentice who is blind or has low vision may ask their employer to provide a Braille keyboard or screen magnification or a keyboard with large print. That's just an example. There are many other areas and accommodations that can be provided to someone who self-identifies. Next slide, please. There are so many benefits into integrating DEIA into registered apprenticeships. I'm just going to highlight a few. There are much more than what's on this slide. Diversity of thought enhances innovation by 20%. It helps create a stronger and broader narrative. What if we all thought the same? How boring would that be? I may think differently from Chris or Allison Deal or Allison Mo. It's welcoming the diversity of thought. We have heard, and research has proven, that it increases productivity. So who doesn't want to do that? What workplace doesn't want an increase in productivity? Companies benefit most when upper and lower management are racially diverse. So we have the WOTC tax credits, a link embedded here. You're more than welcome to do some research on that after receiving the slide deck. Next slide, please. For purposes of the contract award that I am presenting on for the ACE network, we like to ensure that we relay how the Department of Labor define underrepresented and underserved population. Underrepresented may include women, people of color, individuals with disabilities, and underserved populations may include veterans, justice impacted individuals, youth, and those individuals in rural communities. Next slide, please. Earlier, I mentioned underserved communities, and many of you may be wondering who might that include. Here's a list of underserved communities. Individuals who are pregnant, caregivers, parents, LGBTQ plus individuals, Native Americans, women. So this is an ongoing list: Black and African Americans, Hispanic and Latino communities. Next slide, please. And here are more that you may consider as underserved communities. Next slide, please. As I stated on the previous slide, veterans are a part of the underserved populations. Make sure you keep in mind that DOL provides priority to veterans. In registered apprenticeship programs, they get priority treatment. There are many aspects to organizations that organizations must consider when recruiting veterans, and you may ask yourself some questions about what type of culture do you have for your veterans. You may go from being veteran friendly to being veteran ready, being ready to accept your veterans. And these are some questions that you may ask yourself. Are you screening effectively for veterans? Do you have programs or policies within your organization that have been successfully implementing for recruiting, onboarding, and integrating veterans into your workplace? And what resources are available? So these are just some questions to consider while you are screening for your veterans. Next slide, please. Veterans bring a lot of benefits to the workplace. It's been proven that they provide higher retention. They have great team building skills. There are tax credits associated with hiring veterans. They're quick learners, and obviously they're problem solvers. So please keep that in mind as you are interviewing and hiring your veterans. Next slide, please. There are GI Bill benefits associated with hiring veterans. They get the Montgomery GI Bill for active duty, and it can be used for college, graduate programs, and registered apprenticeship programs. So that's something to encourage your veterans to use, and something for you to be aware of. Next slide, please. DEI focused outreach. Make sure you're screening in, not screening out. There are lots of information out right now that you can reference based on your job description. Are you asking for things that are not necessarily needed? Like, does the job really require a college degree? Do you really have to be able to lift 60 pounds? You know, things like that. So hold community open houses to provide awareness about the jobs. DEI outreach is extremely important. When you're conducting outreach, ensure your efforts are inclusive. There are so many nuances that are embedded in the hiring practices that you may want to consider. Does your hiring panel look like the population you want to onboard? So make sure you're thinking about all of those those details. That is just status quo. This is how we've always done it. So make sure you're keeping that in mind as you conduct your outreach. Next slide, please. Once we have conducted outreach, we should be ready to recruit the targeted population. The Department of Labor and all sponsors are required to conduct universal outreach and recruitment. This entails that your organization is reaching out to your communities, those within your relevant recruitment area. And you can go to the next slide, Amy. It's a really effective tool because you can enter the state, and the map will display organizations in your area. And it's very detailed. It actually helps you ensure that you are meeting your EEO regulations in conducting your outreach. And these are steps that will take you through each variation of recruitment. It's a great tool. The link is embedded and it is included in the slide deck once you receive the slides. You can go to the next slide, Amy. So that's recruitment. And you can't really talk about recruitment without talking about retaining the employees, the workforce that you bring on board. DEI mindsets really leads to retention, because you are now creating a culture of belonging. Just because you hire a diverse individual or an individual with a diverse background doesn't mean you've met your DEI goals. Does that individual have a voice? So now you're developing a culture of belonging, including information about training and classroom instruction is very important to understanding what DEI is, and making sure that you are not only training those individuals that you're hiring, but those managerial positions. Those individuals need to know what DEI means. So it's for those individuals you're hiring and for the culture of the organization. DEI initiatives really comes from the top. Management has to be involved in this initiative. Next slide, please. EEO regulations. Many wonder what the difference between EEO and affirmative action is. The Department of Labor has placed EEO regulations for registered apprenticeship programs to help businesses reach a larger and more diverse pool. This allows individuals, including women, minorities, individuals with disabilities, the opportunity to become apprentices, the opportunity to identify a career path for them. So I'm sure we all have seen when we were, before COVID, eons back, it feels like, the EEO regulations in the break rooms. So that's mandated by the Department of Labor, saying that they are an equal employment opportunity employer. Next slide, please. Sponsors are responsible for ensuring all aspects of the registered apprenticeship program, including OJL and the related technical components, and mentoring are in compliance with EEO regulations. These links for additional information will be in the slide deck as well. So let's briefly go over affirmative action plans. It's generally an approach to the 5 key EEO responsibilities. Affirmative action plans is a written document that outlines the actions that will be taken to ensure EEO requirements are met. I don't have time to get into all of the bullets, but again, the information and all the details are listed in the links in the deck. Programs with 5 or more apprentices may be exempt from creating affirmative action plans if they're subject to approval by EEO. So that's just something to keep in mind. Just next slide, please. This is just more information on developing your affirmative action plans. And that's just information that will also be in the slide deck. Next slide, please. I will reiterate, if a program has fewer than 5 apprentices, this is an affirmative action plan is warranted. When the employer is ready to establish an affirmative action plan, As a TA provider with the Department of Labor contract, we will be able to assist you with that. Which leads me, next slide, please, to the key deliverables of our project. The technical assistance that we provide is outreach and education in developing your registered apprenticeship programs. We have financial incentives that we can provide for you, and all of those will be in the next slide, please. All of those will be in the information that we are providing with the slide deck. You will have the website, which is apprenticeships@irec.org. That'll be in the slides at the end. I'll drop it in the chat as well, and my contact information will be there as well. Allison Moe, we did it. 2:22 with time left to spare if there are questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hills Thomas. We appreciate your insight and your understanding beyond just what's on the slide, but your deep understanding of your part of the presentation. It was outstanding. I would encourage folks to drop questions either in the Q&A or the chat. Many times the chat gives others a chance to see that in real time, and we'll try to address those as we can. We have a few moments where we have folks that we can certainly do that. Do we have any other of the panelists that have any parting or summary items they'd like to circle back around to in the time that we have left here this afternoon? We have a question at hand here. I believe this is Dr. Hills Thomas for you. Can you elaborate on the comment that apprenticeships give priority to veterans?
Yeah, so DOL provides, and those who have registered apprenticeship programs, feel free to jump in. DOL provides priority to veterans, meaning if you have a wait list or students signing up for your program, just say you have one spot left, the veteran will have the rights to that spot rather than one of the students who are not veterans. So the veterans have priority over anyone else that is maybe in the underrepresented category, or those individuals who are not considered underrepresented.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
As we near the end here, we wanted to have everybody be able to see these next step slide that you have in front of you there. There are some outstanding resources in that bullet point number 1, or that numeral 1, from IREC. And I think this goes without saying, but all of our panelists are available for you to mine their resources and mine their knowledge. The respective folks have their emails on the screen now, and there will be a toolkit coming for the apprenticeship endeavors that many of you, I hope, this afternoon have jogged your memory and jogged your interest in moving forward with a possible apprenticeship. That should be here by year's end at the end of 2024. And there will be numerous conferences throughout the remainder of 24 that no doubt will have workforce development and apprenticeship content embedded within. So thank you so much. We've got another question here that we've got time to answer. And that is, with such a great retention rate for some of these initiatives, will the programs remain sustainable for future recruitment efforts, as in, Will they be able to continue for years to come if the participants continue to stick around, if the program reach full staff capacity? Can it still support the apprenticeship and recruitment efforts? In other words, that whole question deals with longevity. Any one of our panelists wish to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I think that the beauty of the apprenticeships is that it provides people with advancement opportunities, and I think we will see and are seeing a significant number of people that are retiring and will continue to retire over the next 10 years. So I think that that should be taken into consideration as far as remaining sustainable. There's going to be a need for skilled trades. There's going to be a need for an energy efficiency workforce to continue to grow. There's a lot of focus on energy and our energy future in the United States. So I think there's a lot of advancement opportunities for people to use an apprenticeship to be able to access a career path and get going on it. And hopefully, we'll see some good retention within the Weatherization Assistance Program through the apprenticeship. But I do think that it'll lead people to look at where can they go within weatherization and also beyond weatherization too.
Thank you.
I'd also, Chris, I'd love to jump in and bring a different perspective in the response. One of the things we have observed at JFF is sort of like the funding to support the apprenticeship system. So federal funding has been bipartisan. So there's been lots of energy around funding apprenticeships. They're showing up in all of the infrastructure investments. So like if you're looking to braid funding or look to federal funding to support some of these programs and to bring on additional cohorts into whatever weatherization or other programs you're designing, I think there's a lot of energy to support that. So I would still look to future funding to support the work that's happening here.
Great comment. Great comment. And back to Allison Moe's comment in the chat, apprenticeships by design are flexible and by design can be ramped up and down as needed and as warranted. And with the pure demographics, as Allison Deal mentioned, the pure demographics of our baby boomer retirements that are impending here over the next 10 years paint a really good picture for apprenticeships across clean energy, certainly, but the broader sector, as Nicole mentioned, the broader sector fits apprenticeship models quite nicely as well. Further comments, questions, answers in the chat? Just want to reiterate, as you know, this has been recorded and this will be made available to all participants in the coming days, as well as throughout on our website at NCAP for a broadest dissemination possible. We thank everybody's attendance. Any last comments before we conclude from our panelists this afternoon? Well, hearing none, on behalf of our entire group of panelists and the staff at the National Community Action Partnership, we are thrilled that you've joined us. You have lots of things that you could be doing on a Thursday afternoon, and thank you so much for giving your time and energy to this growing field of apprenticeships. We'll look forward to seeing you down the road in a variety of sources, and keep up the good work that you do each and every day in the weatherization space. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Thank you.